Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Smith, award-winning director Brian Redondo, and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vonnie. This is episode 20, and on today's show, we take a look at The Falcon and the Winter Soldiers, episode 2 through 5, and we might make Ben Shapiro pretty mad because we're going to talk about race. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund. Friends, it's been a while. Episode 20, guys, we've made it to episode 20. We're like actual podcasters.
Oh my
now.
lord. Clap it up, gentlemen.
Yeah,
Y'all, I was telling Brian, I'm really surprised he actually, has been with us for this many episodes. I thought, maybe he'd be in for a couple episodes, and then he'd be like, you know what, I got other things to do.
I'm surprised
Yeah, me and
myself.
Wesley were trying to like plan the show out, and we were both like, all right, you and me will both find our flakiest friend, and then we'll
Gotcha.
Flake high fives.
From the top rope.
Hey, and we're doing it in a pandemic, and we're doing it remotely. We're all in different places. Only Savon and Mike are in the same city, and me and Brian are in totally different cities, and we're still making it work, guys.
We're in the same headspace, though.
yeah,
Mentally, I'm with you.
professional operation we got going here.
Oh man, we are so on the ball. I mean, we've come a long way, though. I will say, Mike was saying how much we've improved in the past year. I don't really know how to quantify that, but hey, growth is growth, right?
And shout out to the listeners, friends of the show. You all know who you are.
Shout out to the day
We
ones.
might be here without
Day
you,
ones.
but because clearly people listening to it's not a big motivator for us. But shout out to y'all anyway. Y'all know who you are.
Facts.
We are pressing on
Alexis.
despite the massive number of non-listeners that we've got. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Falcon and Winter Soldier. We're all the way up to episode 5 at this point, 5 out of 6. So unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen in the finale, but I think that gives us a little bit of room here to make some predictions still for how it's going to finalize itself or finish up. I wanted to actually go way back to episode 2 a little bit, and they kind of brought it back in episode 5, or they did bring it back in episode 5, which was episode 2 made a lot of heavy-handed nods and references to race, including Sam being called the Black Falcon by the young kid in the street, and the police stopping Falcon for harassing Bucky. They were having a little argument and tussle in the street, and the police thought it was Sam's fault. And the show clearly implied it was because he was black and Bucky was white. And then those storylines kind of disappeared for a few episodes, and now they're kind of back in episode 5. How are you guys sort of processing how the show is handling race or talking about race? And does it seem like it's important? Does it seem like it's actually working? Where are you guys kind of on that? I don't know. Let's go to Savon. Savon, what's your...
Let's go to the black guy.
Let's go to
Listen,
the
I
black
think I'm
guy.
actually qualified to take this one. Don't worry, Savon.
Mikhail,
Well,
take it away.
This was something that we talked about before before the show even came out, was how Mike, he said, how is the mouse gonna handle race? Were they gonna be soft on it? Were they gonna whitewash it? I had faith that they would not take the easy way out. And
Did you genuinely?
I did, honestly.
Okay.
I think like some of those actors that they have on, you got Don Cheadle, Anthony Mackie, a lot of these people are like high profile actors who are really committed to these roles. I don't think that they would, especially for a role that's significant. Like I've seen interviews with Anthony Mackie, he talked about like, he was crying on the phone with his son when he told him, hey, I'm going to be the next Captain America. So he as a person acknowledges the importance on the representation bit. I don't think that he would go along creatively with something that was just clearly not genuine. Like, Wesley, you mentioned how in episode 2 there were examples of things that seemed like, heavy-handed examples of race. And, I was talking to a friend of mine, and it's funny, all of those examples of things that came up with race are things that honestly, if either I've seen firsthand experience or someone I know has experienced. Like the police thing, I've seen that happen straight up. Like it sounds like, oh, it's so cheesy. Oh, it's not. It's so obvious. It's like, yeah, but I know multiple people who have had experiences comparable to that. Like real deal happen. Just because you don't see it, don't mean it ain't real. Or like the loan stuff. I've had conversations with people who were like, man, they ask a lot of questions, and like that's real stuff. So I appreciated that. I think what I've appreciated most though in how they've talked about race is just I don't think they make the black characters monoliths, which is usually something that worries me more than anything else. Like none of the black characters all have the same views. They all still have their own opinions. There's nuance to their views. Even if they all have like acknowledged racism, they might be on a different spectrum of what that means for them. You know, the sister Sarah talks about race when she's trying to get the loan, but she still contrasts from Isaiah Bradley when they talk to Sam about how he should move forward with, carrying on the legacy. So the characters aren't just all put into a bottle of, oh, we all feel the exact same way, which is what I tend to get bothered most by. So I think them just adding a lot of nuance and uniqueness to the black characters, not making them all the same person, but spread across 4 different characters is, I appreciated that. I liked it.
And they criticize each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, heavily. So not only is the show, centered around a black family, but it's supposed to be a New Orleanian family. So how do you feel about how because they've been pretty like heavy-handed with a few jokes about like New Orleans, like the whole TT bit. Like, how have you felt that they've handled that?
I mean, it's like some people might think it's cheesy, but like that's real. Like my mom, everyone calls her TD. Like that's really what people call her. TD.
Yeah.
Like that's not a joke. Like people have her saved in the phone. Like my little cousin calls my mom TD. Like they don't call her Aunt T. They don't call her Meredith. They call her TD. And that's like, I can't say it's not genuine when I done seen it firsthand in real life. Like what else you want?
And that kind of goes back to your first point about at this point, like these actors probably wouldn't have, really signed off if the story was inauthentic. And, Anthony Mackie is, if people don't know, is from New Orleans. So it's clear that like he was able to bring that to the character. So, I mean, I just think like that's a cool principle for like such a giant
Where did he go to high school?
Company. I don't know. Do you know?
Dang it.
Isidore Newman.
No, he didn't go to Noka. No, he went to
Noka.
No, he didn't go to Noka. I think he went to it was a black public, a primarily black. Was it McMain? Was it not McMain? Maybe it was
Warren Easton.
McDonald 35.
He went to Easton?
He went to like a New Orleans high school though.
All right.
Not just one of those. He didn't go to like a private school as far as I know.
No,
Easton's
and Noka.
Okay, so yeah, I mean,
New Orleans.
All the
Center for
artsy kids
Creative
went to
Arts.
Noka too.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean that's dope. I mean like it's just cool that there's clearly such level of autonomy for these actors.
To me, one of the biggest sort of jaw-dropping embraces of talking about race and racism has been the Isaiah Bradley storyline in the show, which I
wish there was more of it.
That came in the 2nd episode. The guy, who was given the serum against his own will, was experimented on. That whole concept, I'm familiar with it, that they did that in the comic books, but I did not think the show or the MCU would touch that with a 10-foot pole. Because, experimenting on black people and that truly horrific level of racism, American racism, I didn't think they would touch, but they did, and they went for it in the 2nd episode.
To Brian's point, them adapting it is what you really would be surprised, because like there's lots of source material they could use to tell whatever story they want. The real question is, what are you going to choose to adapt? And that's, they could have not did that, and they went full send on it. Like when he was telling that story about his exact experiences, man, that was rough, man. I was choking up. I was like, ooh, they really, because first Captain America movie, Steve did the same thing, right? Like Steve went to a POW camp, freed his people when they told him not to, and they made him a hero for that. But for Broy, they locked him up. I'm like, dang, son, that's jacked up.
You almost like in that scene, I almost forgot I was watching like an MCU thing. It was like such a great performance, and I was like, as soon as it was over, I was like, oh my god, this is about like half about a show with the guy with a metal arm. Like that was some great acting, and it was like clearly built investment in the characters. That scene kind of restored my faith in the show. I was starting to waver. a bit.
Agreed.
So one thing about the Isaiah Bradley thing I also liked was beyond the race element, there's still the trying to be a hero for your country element. And I thought that was a very interesting parallel when you look at what's happening with John Walker, right? Like, he did an awful thing that we saw the previous episode and was reprimanded. But all that stuff he said about y'all made me what I am, y'all, like, he's not wrong. He's not wrong in the slightest. He was a U.S. soldier trained to ultimately, like, kill people and take lives. And you can be upset at his judgment in the moment, but it's pretty wild how he also, similar to Isaiah Bradley, was someone who tried to serve his country, do what he thought was right, and ultimately was discarded when his error in judgment was, they perceived the error in his judgment. Bradley for saving the POWs, Walker for killing the dude in public after Hoskins gets killed. So there was some interesting parallels of how, like, people who serve in the military still get discarded and not treated and done dirty. And, I thought that was very, like, intentional.
Yeah, and I liked how Walker and Hoskins also allude to the gray areas that they ventured into in their tours of duty. I can't remember if they said Afghanistan or Iraq.
Yeah, they did say
specifically,
Afghanistan, which I kind of cringed at that line, to be honest.
And I think it's just like an interesting nuance to bring into this idea of military and what they're forced to do and confront, and how it's not black and white in the superhero game.
Yeah. But then what did he say? He said, like, imagine how many people we could have saved if I had the super serum. I was like,
yeah, but like, he's not wrong. Like, I don't know. I'm not a soldier, so I can't speak to that. But
so, like, and I think I touched on this earlier briefly, and Brian agreed with me. Like, I was starting to kind of waver on the show, and then this episode, like, because it had such high highs, not only with like the Isaiah and Sam line there and like how well they did that, but I just think like the plot picked up. How were y'all feeling? Like, because we're on now episode 5. Like, how were y'all feeling, and now how are you feeling about the show?
I think it's kind of, despite all the cool things we've just been talking about, I think the show as a whole has kind of been a little rocky, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, it's still a high quality, highly produced show, and there's great acting and a lot of interesting things going on. But at the same time, it's kind of a jumble too, right? Like, we go from episode 2 where we finally get the Winter Soldier and Falcon together, and they have such great on-screen chemistry, and then you bring in Isaiah Bradley, and then pivot to episodes 3 and 4, which just kind of like go all over the place. They're in Madripoor, they're talking to Sharon Carter, there's a power broker, and then suddenly Carly from the Flag Smashers gets like
Latvia.
like this super storyline, and then the folks from Wakanda come through. There's just a lot going on, and then to pivot back in episode 6,
you haven't even said Zemo.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they break out Zemo. It's a lot. And then to come back in episode 6 and then return to New Orleans, return to Sarah, return to Isaiah Bradley.
Episode 5.
Or episode 5, excuse me. And I think those elements of the show were suddenly way more, or much welcomed in their return, because they grounded the show. They sort of like stuck the focus back on. We got to explore the characters who we were just starting to get to know again, before kind of the chaos of episodes 3 and 4. So it's kind of a mixed bag, I think.
I kind of feel like I'm in the same boat. I feel like, even the way that I structured our like notes for today, it was like there's a lot going on that's still spinning, and some of that did get a little bit sort of addressed or kind of wrapped up in episode 5. But there's still a lot more that's sort of like spiraling right now around this thing. And so I'm actually really excited because episode 5 started to give us some like closure on some of them, that I'm excited to see where they go in episode 6. You can kind of see that there's a showdown coming now in episode 6. But it may not play out the way that you think it will, or maybe it will, I don't know. But it seems like they're probably going to like twist it a little bit. Marvel's pretty good at that. I started out in our last show, we talked about episode 1 and how I really felt like Bucky's story and Bucky's like duality, or like his difficulties in sort of his double life that he's had to lead, or triple life, were kind of some of the most like interesting explored spaces in that first episode, and I hope that they would do more, and they just really haven't, which is fine. I mean, they can do what they want, and I wasn't as excited about Sam's storyline because it was very much like Sam is the goody two shoes. It was very much like I'm gonna do the right thing. I'm gonna be the new Steve Rogers, and it's not that he's lost any of that, but his interactions with Isaiah, his interactions with trying to figure out how he's going to handle Carly, that stuff is starting to be more interesting to me. And then in the last episode where he's now been able to come home and train, right? We see, the traditional Rocky montage of him training and getting better with his shield and getting more in shape and hitting the meat in the freezer, all of that good stuff.
I wish there was meat in the freezer. Can that get a shield to it?
Oh, that would have been great.
But that was now, like, I think we're starting to see that like upward momentum that I was kind of like, I think you're all kind of naming, we kind of missed in episodes 3 and 4 is a lot of setup. And it's not even clear that all that setup is going to pay off here. It's like, where is Sharon Carter going to come in here? She's like playing both sides at this point. Like lots of things are happening here that just seem like they're too messy for a 6-episode arc. So that's kind of where I'm at, but I'm excited for episode 6, man. Like I do want to see where it goes and how the final conflicts happen.
Yeah, still invested.
So apparently, and I can't confirm this, there's like some reporting on it that there were a lot of rewrites for the show, and that there was going to be a whole like a main storyline that was about a pandemic, and like that was going to be like the Flag Smashers like thing, like unleashing a pandemic.
I've heard that
which
too.
Obviously you can't really do that in the midst of an actual global pandemic, so then they had to get rid of that main storyline. And I think like when you look at it that lens, it does kind of like give a little context on like why it seems like what would have been like a one-off side storyline, they're all kind of just been brought up a bit to fill the area of that main plot line. And like I learned that, so our friend Alan, who like is genuinely skeptical and calls things cinema Alan, so like that gives you exactly like what he's gonna come into a Marvel thing with, but he hates this show.
Really?
He like thinks it's trash. Which, like, my whole thing is, like, it's a Marvel thing. So, like, first off, let's temper our expectations here a bit. But, yeah, he really hates it. But then he was like, once I understood the context of, like, them pulling out a main storyline and then having to kind of pump in a little hot air to the rest of them, like, that made him like it a little more. And, like, the same thing for me. Like, it's kind of just reiterating what you were saying. But, like, up until now, it just kind of seemed like we were kind of just, like, wandering around and, like, nothing was really happening, but things were happening. So I was kind of cold, but now I am also excited for episode 6. It's just, like, they took, like, what would have been the first 30 minutes of a movie of, like, him, going through all these things to become Captain America, and they kind of drug it out into a whole show.
So does this mean we're going to get a Snyder cut of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in 3 years?
Yeah,
I hope not.
It'll just be like a 10-hour movie.
God,
I do think though that I still go back to this idea that this show, and I think Miles, my friend and friend of the show, brought up that like this show is really designed to help us get acclimated to the idea of Sam as the new Captain America.
Yeah.
Right. And exploring how that's going to be. And so the brilliant move, right, is giving John Walker the shield first so that Sam is taking the shield off of him. And you're like, he is clearly way more deserving as a Captain America than John Walker is. And he's not having to compete against, 10 years of Steve Rogers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I do think that like, if that was like one of their goals, like I think they've done an A+ job at that. I'm like, he can be the Captain America. I don't care. Like, I'm awesome. I'm excited for it, and I don't feel bad about being like, well, what about like the old Captain America? It's like, no, that guy had his time. He's done now. Like, let's move on. I'm ready for the Falcon's take on it. And then I guess Torres maybe is going to become the next Falcon. Is that kind of what they're implying?
Who is that guy? He was
Torres,
in the show, and then
Torres is a
in
comic.
The show? Like,
he's a
what?
comic character. But he ends up becoming like, a lot of Marvel characters are legacy characters, so multiple people wear the mantle. I think he wears the Falcon mantle at a certain point. And I think it ties specifically to when Falcon leaves the mantle become, at a time, one of the Marvel runs where he's actually Captain America.
That was a
think he becomes
terrible
a bad
line,
guy.
though. You forgot your wings. Like,
Yeah, like twice.
what?
Oh my god! I was like, oh, I don't know if you've noticed, but he rejected the wings and walked out with the shield. That's what's known as symbolism, fellas. It's a cinema term. I don't know if you ever.
What's cinema?
One thing I want to say, I agree with y'all about like the plot stuff. You can see how the rewrites had their effect on things. What I did still appreciate, even when the plot was kind of like all over the place, was that I still just enjoyed the character interactions. So even if I wasn't enjoying, like even if the overall plot was like, okay, whatever, these characters and actors still interact in a way that's very, like one character who I loved, and I didn't think I loved him, and I think they kind of like misdirected us a little bit with him, was Zemo. They made it seem like Zemo would be this huge antagonist force, but really Zemo was really kind of like chaotic neutral at worst. But he was he's
like lawful neutral.
Yeah, maybe lawful neutral. But I love Zemo because he's not really a villain. Like,
no, he's not
just
at all
principled.
A villain in the show.
Yeah,
like,
he's an
and
antagonist,
cool,
but he's not like he's not evil. Every bad thing he did, he apologized for. Like he apologized to T'Challa at the end of Civil War, saying, "Hey, your dad was probably a good man. I'm genuinely sorry." You know, and when you get like, did he cause any more deaths than Tony did?
But can't you say sorry when you're like, I don't regret what I did? Like,
no.
that's not a sorry. Exactly.
But he's principled.
Yeah,
and,
is
like,
he any better than Tony? Like Tony destroyed Sokovia because he made Ultron. Like, there's a you take the good with the bad.
But that was
like
accidental.
Dude, I actually
also.
he had a whole rant. I think it was like episode 4 about like the supremacy of being and like I thought that like that's been touched on, like whether it's Homelander or Superman and like that whole kind of like putting them on pedestals, but like he actually articulated it in a really great way that worked in the story. I like now I'm talking about it, like he's been one of my favorite parts because they've really like another thing is like when all the serum was on the ground and they like cut to him and you're like, oh, he's gonna change his mind and take him, and then they just pause and he starts crushing all
didn't
of
even
them.
hesitate.
Like, it's
that was a great
he's
moment.
also a really good actor. Like that guy's legit. So it's like, and then it's just like I'm so confused by this show. Like I don't care about Carly Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers, and it's like but
I really like her character.
Yeah,
I hate her story. Her story makes no sense, and it's like there's no like they don't explain anything. But like I love her character. Like I wish she was doing something else.
Yeah, and it's like they also doing a cool job of like talking about the actual implication of everybody coming back, but I still don't really care about it. And then they cut to like the GRC like boardroom. It almost kind of feels like there is a Snyder cut, like in like the first Justice League where it was like, what is going? Like I feel like we're missing something here, and maybe like with rewrites that makes sense because they rewrote.
Yeah, there's a lot of silliness going on, and like
if you had a pandemic
storyline, all the people, and then the Flag Smashers were in there, and it was like he did the little like talk in the ear thing, like the Hail Hydra, and I was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, if you do like, I feel like the pandemic storyline would have made all this so much better. I just feel like there's just clearly something missing.
I will say though, the one thing that did, make me go, wow, this is great in episodes 3 and 4, was the club scene with Zemo dancing.
Yeah,
they
put out like
being.
an hour-long cut of him dancing on YouTube. Apparently,
I definitely watched like 5 minutes of it.
Yeah, I love it.
Also, last thought, the fights are sick. Like in the last one where they
did
that move where like Bucky like whipped him by the legs, and then Falcon did like the back kick thing.
Yeah,
I was like, ugh, like, that's pretty. I really like the fights. But then last weird thing, and I said this to Savon, like it was another thing that confused me. It was like in that fight with the Flag Smashers versus like all the other guys, they're trying to stab them, right? So it's like, we're trying to kill you, and then when Lamar dies, suddenly they're all like,
yeah, everyone stops.
Like, yeah, and then they're like, oh, wait, I was just trying to stab you to death 10 seconds ago, but oh my god, someone actually died. Like, and then they take off their mask and run away. It's like,
I didn't pick up on that. That is pretty ridiculous.
Really silly.
Yeah, I was like,
that's just one of those. It's still just, it's not real life. That's one of those you gotta suspend your disbelief. It's dramatic.
We had our phaser set to stun.
Yeah, I haven't felt that about Marvel stuff in a while. It was just like immediate like pulls you out of the suspension of disbelief, and like that was really abrasive. I was like, what is like? It just feels like maybe something was cut out there. I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely feels like maybe because I was saying like, oh, maybe it feels like the show is rushing a bit, right? Like because they're throwing so many things out there. But maybe it's not rushing. Maybe it's actually like space filling that is actually harming the show in a way. Like, either they were filling space or they had too much and they were trying to cut things out and just like kind of cut out the things that like maybe were connective in a way that we needed. The one thing I do want them to go back to, and I assume they're going to go back to it because they made a really big deal about it in episode 1, was Mr. Nakajima.
I think they will.
They're definitely going to go back to that.
That was what that whole conversation was about, like, you can't, and that was also really cool.
On one person.
I want men that I love. We got 2 grown men talking about their feelings, really opening up, reflecting, helping them grow to be better men and be better people, and telling them what they need to hear. We need more of that.
I love that.
Was
beautiful.
Solid,
you know what? I feel like
this
show is like a cake that's really mediocre with a really great frosting and like some like delicious like chocolate covered.
Is
Oreos
it buttercream? Is it
like
chocolate ganache? What are we having?
I feel like
here
it's
on
a
this
good cake.
Yeah, it's like.
But they went to the store to get the ingredients,
Chantilly.
and some of the ingredients they didn't have, and they had to just like, all right, cool, look, it's like a baking challenge. All right, you get to make this cake, but here are these constrictions. You had this dope storyline you wanted to do, you can't do it.
Edition.
Yeah, I mean, and that it might not actually be filler like Wes was saying. It might actually just be MCU bloat, which I think other movies have also suffered from. When the demands of the cinematic universe is that we need to introduce these characters and these storylines in this specific vehicle, so that
my God,
climax.
You know what? We're
3
not
movies
do
later.
No, but I haven't felt that in a movie in a while. I feel like they've been like really like making good films, quote unquote. Where it's like it doesn't just seem like a go turn your brain off, smooth brain. Superhero movie. It was like an actual movie worth considering, but now this like some of this it's like it feels bloated.
Quick bit.
It's like you have to do Zemo, you have to bring in Sharon Carter, but we don't know if she's good or bad. Bucky's gonna fall in love with Sam's sister. They're gonna kind of build their relationship together. So we're gonna throw in a whole like giant like under.
Oh yeah, how patronizing was that though? Don't flirt with my sister. Like, come on.
Yeah,
that was
I love
straight out of
that.
1998.
I love that.
Straight out of 1998.
You never said that to one of your friends with your sister?
I've had my homies
7 years younger. No,
I've definitely had my homie like not for real, but it's just like, bro, don't. Like it's clearly meant to be a troll thing, and Bucky's clearly trolling Sam. Quick thing also, because this is something I thought about kind of a little bit after Endgame, or it was a conversation I've had with people, was I'm glad Bucky said sorry, because like I'm glad Bucky apologized to Sam, because I feel like the biggest thing I was wondering is the MCU gonna like, remember how in the beginning I was talking about whether or not Sam has a little bit of imposter syndrome, or whether he even wants to be in that boat in the first place, and I was wondering, hey, are they going to explore this, and are they going to address this? And they high-key
that
did, like,
line, he delivered that line. It felt so weird to me. You liked the way Bucky said that, and like that how that was messaged.
Well, how he said, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, well, like he was like the specific line was like really dry. It was like, me and Steve never considered what it would have been to give the shield to a black man.
Not really. I think that's just like that's the objective truth. It's like, yo, y'all didn't think about like, yo, y'all put him in a really awkward spot of like, yo, now you're making me take on a legacy that comes with a lot of loaded BS with it. That like, hey, do I even want to do this? And then, that's the criticism on Steve's end, then on Bucky's end to be upset. But like I was cool with, like, I'm not tripping about that because that's just
the sentiment
semantics.
I agree with, but like the delivery of the line seemed so like dry and like not really like authentic. I don't know.
The show can be a little heavy-handed sometimes.
Yeah,
I thought it was straight up. Like, I mean, I think like I feel like that's what I imagine that is what a white person would say, if they were apologizing for something that they perceive to they retroactively realize. I think I effed up because.
Yeah.
I think would it be authentic if he didn't acknowledge, hey, as a black man, we put you in an awkward spot, like.
Can I ask one more question? And this is like a very shallow question. My understanding was they catch the shield with magnets on their arm.
That was
he
just
was
Age of
literally
Ultron.
catching it like with his bare hands, like that. Like
that was just Age of
I'm
Ultron.
Like oh really? How do you catch the shield then?
Do you have to slip your hand through the?
That seems
through
like
the straps?
wildly inefficient for us to be like a
I had that thought a lot.
shield that's like probably
what are we doing?
Like billions of dollars. It's just like you gotta hope you just like stick your hand through 2 leather loops.
That's the skill. That's why you had to practice it.
He's not even wearing sticky gloves.
Yeah. He's not wearing any gloves. How are you catching this giant metal disc, like pinching it like it's like a frisbee?
Well, I don't know. Look, he was kind of getting his behind bust a little bit when he was catching it. Like, in fairness, multiple times he ducked it. He was like, oh no.
Yeah, I thought his arm was gonna be all bruised up.
Maybe that's like, what's in the box from Wakanda. It's just like new Nike technology.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that because they did the magnet bit in Age of Ultron with Steve having it, but then afterwards they moved away from it. So I guess maybe they just want to emphasize, like suspend. You have to first of all, you have to perpetually suspend your disbelief when it comes to the Shield. If you couldn't do that in the first movie,
they're showing it takes a lot of skill.
Yeah, because even John Walker, as much as you don't like the dude, they did show, he could low key use that shield. Like, I think that's on purpose. It's clearly not easy, but
okay, I want this to be the last question. It's about John Walker. Do we want the MCU to
John Walker?
Well, do we want the MCU to continue exploring him in any way?
He's gonna be a movie villain down the line.
He's gonna be around, I think.
100%. Yeah. They introduced him to
I like
Madam
him
Hydra.
A lot of people hate him, but I really. Oh, is that what Val is? Oh,
so
Selena Meyer.
So Val, the character Val, the woman who talks to John, essentially she is a Hydra character, and I'm not sure exactly what that's gonna look like in here, but it's clear that they're setting him up to be okay. He's thrown off. He's got the serum. He's gonna be like the Hydra Captain America type role, and that's clearly, he's clearly powered up, so he's not a weakling. He's going to be unstable, and he's going to have some rich benefactors behind him. He's clearly getting set up to be a foil type character to Falcon for whenever he gets a movie, because like y'all said, they're doing this to kind of get us open to the idea. Then, bam, you got your actual Falcon movie, John Walker as the villain. Let's get it cracking.
He clearly took that has to be illegal, right? You can't just take super serum. It's just like nobody's going to address that. I'm like, what are we talking about here? Like, he's banging on the thing. It sounds like he's like banging the damn Liberty Bell with like a 2-ton mallet. Like, we're not going to talk about this guy just took some shit he found on the ground and then is
he didn't destroy the table, so that's one thing. Like, I thought if he was going to smash it apart, I was like, because he's strong enough to do that. So I think it's pretty reasonable to say people in the public don't know he is just like he took the serum.
They don't know he has roid rage.
The serum isn't even public.
Yeah. But one thing about Contessa, I did read that she was at one point
the vice president of
the head of Hydra, but she was also vice president and president. Spoiler of the U.S. But
did they change the name of the show? Boop.
Yes.
Shut up, Wes. Jesus Christ.
But she was also kind of a counterpart to Nick Fury in S.H.I.E.L.D.
Really?
And then I think in the comics, even though
for bad guys.
Yeah. No. She's a high level S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
Okay.
And that she actually betrayed Hydra also at some point. So I think her character could go in a lot of different directions. Yeah. She definitely doesn't seem very good natured in this first appearance, but we'll see. And apparently she's also in the Black Widow movie. So there's going to be a lot more of Elaine Bennis in the MCU.
All right, so gents, why don't we call it there? We'll get to see what happens in episode 6. But for now, friends, we're signing off. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at confidently_pod, on Instagram as well. Same handles. Leave us a review. Respond to us. Leave us some comments. We'd love to know what you guys think. Have a great one.
My core members heard the Beyonce story episode, which is hysterical.
Oh, they did?
Did they play it for everybody?
I ended up bringing it up, and I was like, because I've brought up the Beyonce story to them before, and I was like, actually, on the podcast, I'm on my friend, like, we talk about it, and y'all actually might find this to be funny, and they did find it to be hilarious. They stomped on me for my treatment and perception of Beyonce.
My sister said that when she tells people about the show, she tells them to listen to that episode first. She's like, that's like the best example of where they're at, and it's only 12 minutes. So you get them hooked and then get them into other episodes.
And then it's like, sorry if you don't like video games or Marvel movies. Yeah, this would be a comedy show. Well, it is.
What would happen if Beyonce showed up to Comic-Con? How would fans react?
I bet she has been.
I think everybody loves Beyonce.
You'll see what the overlap of Beyonce fans and like
who are they more excited for, right? You'd be like, oh, but over there is the guy from
Ray Park.
Yeah, Ray Park.
Tommy from the Power Rangers.